Put it right over the table there.
Well, there's people here. You don't do it really loud. You got people right
Yeah, yeah. It's just the mic needs to pick it up. That's all.
Who's right? All right, we're going.
Can you do it again?
Okay. This weekend at CWI, or actually it was last night, you did a tour. What was it, of the battlefield?
Yeah.
And it was for...
It's an overview tour.
Yeah.
So we have 14 high school students here. And they're participating in the Civil War Institute and in the Young Civil War Historians Conference all at the same time. And then what did we have? About 15 to 20 high school teachers. And I shouldn't say high school teachers. Some are community college teachers. Some are elementary school teachers. 15 or 20 teachers. And our goal on the tour was many of these people have never been to Gettysburg before. And this afternoon, they're going to be thrown into an intensive, this is 3 hours in the wheat field. This is 3 hours at an East Cavalry field. But they don't have the big overview picture.
Right.
So let's get them out there. Let's introduce them to the battlefield. Let's give them the story of what happened here, the big picture. But also, let's, for these teachers and for these students, especially for the teachers, let's give them a few ideas to chew on how we can use the battlefield as a classroom.
And that is good, because we always say that it is like an outdoor classroom. And I think that's why, like, a lot of us were upset when the park started letting the vegetation grow back after all those years of cutting and maintaining the cuts, and because, you know, to understand a battle, you've got to be able to see the ground, and that includes the features on top of the ground,
Right.
Woods, houses, barns, fences, whatever, that the soldiers had to contend with in order to just move across the battlefield.
And, you know, and something, the trend in education over the last 20 years, and maybe it's slightly changing, but everything was driven by Common Core standards. So you've got to, if you're taking kids to Gettysburg for the day, you're taking them out of math, you're taking them out of science, you're taking them out of tested areas.
Right.
So I'm going to ask Jared to talk about one part of this, but if we can get teachers to see Gettysburg, you talk about it all the time, Matt, right? Gettysburg's the gateway drug to the Civil War.
Yeah.
And for many people, it's the gateway drug for history. So can we use Gettysburg, get these kids to come to Gettysburg, and maybe think about some of these cross-curricular connections? You want to talk a little bit about math and logistics?
Yeah, part of it, you know, folks might come here and they might not be interested in the battle formations and firing of the bullets and the tactics and all of that. So what are the other components that are going on in the battlefield? What's the job of Robert E. Lee or of George Meade? And I like to make the point that these armies only fight for a handful of days a year. I just looked into the 20th Maine. It's interesting. There's only in 1863 5 days on which they engage in combat that leads to a death of a member of the unit. So 5 days out of 365. 1864 combat becomes much more continuous, but even in 1864, there are only 13 days in which the unit's engaged in combat that leads to the death of a member.
That's interesting, because you know, I always say, but I'm exaggerating to make a point when I say it, but I think part of me actually believes it's true that, like, you know, how do these guys fight a battle like Gettysburg and they get up the next day and fight another one? And they don't. But still, like, to be able to do it again after doing it once.
Moments of terror surrounded by months of boredom.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about that all the time. But if you bring a class here and you say, okay, so Lee has this many men, or Meade has this many men, and they need X amount of water. The horses need X amount of oats.
So I love this. So you the logistical part, or even, you know, with artillery, you may not be interested in firearms and tactics and stuff, but you are interested in geometry and trigonometry or whatever the hell else they use.
Logistics and all of those.
I love this. Yeah. This is great.
And so we wanted some other things, like, so we were at Little Round Top, and so Jared's walking them through accounts out of the 20th Maine, these varying accounts, right? You want to talk about sort of the putting them in order part, or the...
Yeah, and so I think sometimes the mistake we make is that we, give folks a 10-minute overview that's just, here are the facts, here's what happened, but to see how those stories are constructed, right? So to look at some different accounts and to look at accounts that are at different times chronologically, where you have an account and then another account that, in somewhat refutes isn't quite the right word, but adds some detail, corrects some things from the previous account. And then by the time you get to these third and fourth accounts, you're starting to see how the narrative gets shaped. And it's fascinating, I think, for students, because sometimes we make the mistake of, we look back and we can look at accounts from Joshua Chamberlain that were early and ones that were later, and they differ. And we say, oh, he can't even be consistent. But what you're actually seeing are how things get constructed over time. And I think when you share that with students and you put the primary sources in their hands where they can see how this works, I think that's what makes history interesting, is kind of seeing that messy process back and forth, and not just the outcome. Sometimes that's what we see, is just the outcome,
Right.
But what's that whole process?
I love this because I think it's a good way to get people who would otherwise not be interested in history, because I think that's the way schools present it, and they have to do this, I think, just because of time, but they don't. Well, I haven't been in school in 40 years, so, well, not 40 years, 30 years, but it might be different now. But I don't remember there being a symbiosis between my subjects. How do they relate to each other? And you glean certain things, and once in a while you have a teacher who points out, oh, you kids that don't think geometry means anything. Well, these guys in the Washington Artillery certainly needed to know geometry, and they make those, but that's not standard. That's that individual teacher who has that talent, and he can put that together, and he knows how to get into the minds of a student. But that's not across the board. That's not anything that is necessarily found at every school, whatever. But I love this idea. So you're taking educators around and showing them this thing, so that they would then go back to school and maybe say to the kids, do you have any teachers who are not history teachers?
Sure.
Like this weekend?
I don't know about this weekend, but plenty of times in the past, English teachers and absolutely. But I think,
well, an English teacher. Sorry to interrupt you, but English teachers, like, that would be great. It's a history teacher.
I'm a history teacher, but I'm an English teacher.
But like, how much of literature comes? Like, we were just down in Petersburg at the end of April, doing behind the scenes stuff when they were filming The Red Badge of Courage, right?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't read that in history class. I read that in English class.
Sure.
Right. So there's two things coming together.
And if you want to look at it at the basis of what skills were you looking for students to take away from those classes? What you're learning in English class and what you're learning in history class are the same skills. You're learning to read and write and think. They're the same class.
Yeah.
Right. So we can build on that.
I think a lot of it comes down to, and a lot of what we tried to talk about last night and then this morning with our students as we did some other things, is what's the hook? As you are interacting with folks who may have limited interest in this topic, in the Civil War, in Gettysburg to begin with, how do you bring them in? How do you hook them? So if there's somebody that's interested in math, how do you make the Civil War a big math problem? If they're somebody who loves good stories, how do you make the Civil War good stories, right? So what is the piece that draws people in? And I think there are ways to do that, and to engage folks. And some of it is thinking about these different content elements to bring in. And then the other thing that we really tried to do last night was to set up a lot of the narrative as a series of discussion questions, right? To actually get folks to engage things that aren't necessarily as straightforward. So John Reynolds' decision to go to the front lines on July 1 at Gettysburg. What do you gain and what do you lose as a senior commander when you make a decision like that? And that's a question that, adults can grapple
It
with.
has life beyond history.
Yeah. And kids as well, but kind of getting folks engaged in that where it's not passive, I think is really critical too.
And I think the other really important thing that we're looking to do is on Tuesday morning, right? Last day in the morning, we get together for breakfast with the teachers. We talk. Now, we obviously have a full day tour ahead of us, but we've been here for 5 days, whatever we've been here for. This is way more than any of us are ever going to be able to bring into our class.
Sure.
Or maybe
Yeah.
we're spending, if we're lucky, 2 weeks on the Civil War,
Right.
if we're lucky. So what are the things that we're going to take away and use in our class, and how are we going to use them? So just a round table, best ideas, session for what can we take home to our students and to our classrooms that's tangible.
Of course, especially like if you're talking about Gettysburg or the Civil War, one of the first things you would tell all these teachers is subscribe to the Addressing Gettysburg YouTube channel.
That's absolutely what we
And
The first thing.
the first thing you would tell them, well, that is wise. That is wise of you. So what is the reception that you're getting? Are people enjoying this? Or it sounds like something that I think educators would really like.
Well, I think we can look at a little bit at numbers, right? So we did this. So there was a teacher scholarship program, and then it went away. And then it came back 2 years ago.
Okay.
And Jared and I 2 years ago started running it. We had 3. There were 2 of us and 3 teachers.
Okay.
It's a really good teacher-student ratio.
Really good
strong down here.
What was nice is we didn't need buses. We could just drive around. in a
Right,
car.
right.
Yeah.
right.
But, and then last year, I think we had about 12.
Yep.
And then last night we had 15 to 20.
Okay.
So
it's going
hopefully
in the right
word's getting
direction.
out. Word's getting out that this is a worthwhile program.
Yeah.
And that people are enjoying it.
I have an idea, so we'll talk afterwards, and we'll see if maybe we can't help that. Okay, so what else are you guys working on? You have a book that just came out.
I do.
What's this book called? Do we have it over there? I believe we do. Here, throw it. No, don't throw it. Let's see what the book is right here. Oh, this is a very nice cover. Look at
It
this.
is, yeah. They did a great job with the
I had a choice.
production
Both the
quality, so-
hardback and the paperback are down there.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get this. To Gettysburg and Beyond with the 20th Maine, A Hell of a Regiment, ladies and gentlemen, by Jared Peatman. You've been working on this for a while. We had you on a while ago to talk about it.
Yep.
Did we ever put that out?
Yeah. It went
Or am I
out-
waiting for this to come out?
No, it
Okay.
went out quite a long time ago.
All right, well, maybe we'll have to have you on again now that
Yeah.
this is out. But go ahead. So, what the hell are you going to tell us about this hell of a regiment that nobody else has before?
Hey, buddy. What's got you so down?
Hey, Court. I'm looking for a gift, but I just don't know what to get my Gettys nerd friends and family.
It sounds like we need to have a talk. Come on. You love this place, don't you?
You bet I do. It's my favorite place in the world.
Well, you see, at Addressing Gettysburg, it's our mission to keep these stories alive.
How do we do that?
I'm glad you asked, sport. You see, Gettysburg is the gateway to the most brutal and crucial time in American history, so we interview experts, and our listeners learn with us.
That sounds amazing.
It is! Mike, are you f***ing serious?
What? It's for the commercial. What benefits do patrons get?
You mean besides up to 4 premium episodes per month and Matt being the bee's knees as host? Huh. How about early access to special episodes, behind-the-scenes insights, and discounts for ticketed events?
Whoa! None of the other history channels I follow do that for their listeners.
That's because Addressing Gettysburg doesn't take its listeners for granted and really cares about us learning American history.
You know, I should gift my Gettys nerd friends and family an Addressing Gettysburg Patreon membership.
You see, the answer was right under your nose the entire time.
Make Addressing Gettysburg's Patreon a gift for the Gettys nerd in your family this holiday season. Addressing Gettysburg wants you to learn about the Civil War with us, and we need your support. We'll run this ad until it gets annoying, and then we'll run it until you become a patron at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Happy holidays.
The hell are we staring at?
No idea.
You know, what nobody else has before, everybody thinks the 20th Maine is well studied, but actually the last significant book on it was 30 years ago.
Okay.
So it's actually been quite a while. There's new sources that have come to light, largely as a result of all the good work that previous folks have done. There are also new questions that people ask about history 30 odd years later or 70 years after John Pullen's first book. So each chapter tries to answer a central question about the unit. You know, what was the battle experience like? How did they commemorate the war and the aftermath? What really is the story of those Second Maine mutineers? What was Chamberlain's rise to leadership? The one that I'm talking about tomorrow is the chapter I probably enjoyed researching and writing the most, which is the post-war adjustments to coming home.
Oh,
Chapter 5. What
Yeah.
happened to these guys after
That's
the
becoming
war.
more and more interesting to me as I get older. Is that stuff?
Yeah.
Not so much the war.
And it's a question that folks didn't ask. So in 1957, when John Pullen wrote his book, he literally stopped in 1865, which was normal at that time, right? But
Sure.
But now we have these questions. So I'll give you just 2 statistics that maybe will whet the appetite for folks. There are 506 guys on Little Round Top in the 20th Maine, according to this big report that's published in 1898, Maine at Gettysburg. Of those 506 guys, only 166 returned home at the end of the war, not having been shot, done a stint in a Confederate POW camp, or having been discharged for disease or disability.
Wow.
So when you think about 38 are killed here at Gettysburg, 87 in total are killed between Gettysburg and the end of the war. But those who actually made it home without some serious lifelong impacts, it's just 166 out of 506. Here's the other stunning thing I found. Despite all of that, these guys live forever. It's amazing.
Yeah,
So-
Chamberlain lives a long time.
Well, so let's take Chamberlain. 1914 is when Chamberlain passes away. That's 51 years after Gettysburg. When Chamberlain passed away, 143 of the guys who were on Little Round Top with him are still alive.
Really?
It's remarkable, right? The 75% of them lived to be at least 60 years old. And the last survivor of the unit didn't die until 1939. So there's a lot of material to work with these post-war lives. It's just fascinating what they went through.
You know, it's funny because the more I read about these people and I see how old they live to be, it kind of blows that whole idea out of the water that people live to the age of 35.
Yeah.
Like, where does that come from?
It comes from childhood disease. So if you
Okay, so
actually
the
take
average is brought
averages-
down.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the reality is if you live to 10, you were going to live to be in your 50s or
Yeah,
60s.
okay.
NIH did I found a research study from NIH from many years ago. And they asked the question, if you were a white male born in the 1840s or 1850s that reached the age of 20, right? So you've lived through all these childhood diseases. How
Lived through the
old
war.
were you? And ultimately for our guys, lived through the war. How old were you going to live to be? And it was 58, for that subset. So these numbers get driven down by childhood disease. But if you made it to 20, you were actually going to have a pretty long life during that time period.
And it's interesting, too, because 58, by those days' standards, you were an old man. I mean, Lee was, 56 at Gettysburg, I think? 55, 56?
Yeah, 56.
And he looks like he's in his 70s, like a guy in his 70s would look today. So obviously we aged faster then, but still, like Chamberlain was how old when he died? Wasn't he in his 80s?
Chamberlain is born in 1828, so Chamberlain would have been 85 when he passes away.
And he's got that wound that never really heals, right?
Yeah, officially
leaking
he's the
urine and
last.
everything. Like he's a mess, but he makes it that long and has a fruitful life.
Yeah, outwardly.
Yeah.
Outwardly, he's got all the trappings of success.
Yeah.
Inwardly, he's clearly struggling very much.
Sure.
And that's an interesting story, too.
All right. I want to know, what do you think history was really like with the 20th Maine on Little Round Top? Was it closer to the movie or is it closer to an accident? That swinging daw chain charge down the hill?
Well, it's planned. I mean, at Chamberlain, it's clear Chamberlain gives the order. Some people debate bayonets charge.
Yeah. Who
Once
cares?
he shouts bayonets, it's obvious what they're going to do, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's just silliness. But then it gets pretty messy. And, one of the maps in the book that I have showing the charge, it's not this kind of swinging door thing, which is how it's described by a member of the 83rd Pennsylvania. But it's pretty clear from their accounts, they more just run straight out from wherever they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have 3 arrows that show some of the men are running almost off the backside of the hill towards the Tawnytown Road. Some are running straight toward Big Round Top. Some are running more towards the front of the unit.
So in other
they're
words,
basically running
wherever the enemy is in front of them,
Yeah.
they're running towards
they're
the
running
enemy.
straight forward.
But is it possible for the guy in the 83rd, given what his angle of vision is,
Yeah.
that it sure looked like
Yeah.
a planned swinging door to him?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chamberlain says in 1889 at the rededication of their original monument, dedication of the monument up on Big Round Top, he says some of these accounts are inconsistent with one another. He says, but they're all true from the perspective of their writer, and they're true in their own moment.
Very
I'm
diplomatic.
paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but basically he's saying you all saw different things because you were in different places. You're talking about different moments. What you're describing is accurate. It's just perspective that's sort of different.
How about you? What are you working on?
I have a book out on the Revolutionary War.
Oh, nice.
Because I know how to cash in on an anniversary. And I have been speaking a lot about it.
Uh-huh.
And then it's time to turn my attention back to the Civil War. So,
what's the book about? The Revolution?
It's about it's county history. It's Connecticut's story.
So you have was Litchfield County in the Civil War.
Yeah.
We had you on to talk about, which I found very interesting because, and I think I told you this on the show. Like prior to it, I got this book in the mail, Litchfield County in the Civil War, and I go, where the hell is that?
Yeah.
Who the hell cares about Litchfield County, Connecticut?
Right.
But you actually made it interesting because you found these interesting stories, and what it shows is that these guys are just like people today. Some are gaming the system. People in the system are gaming the system. And it just is another brick in the wall that proves that war, life in general, is very messy, but probably way messier during wartime.
Yeah, I think so. And my goal was to write a study about a community mobilizing for war. There's not a lot of that out there. Right? What did that process entail? How did they do it? We say, oh, the community sent its men off to war. And we usually just finish that in a sentence, right? So let's dive deep into that. And there's some really remarkable stories. I was on with you. We spoke about this doctor. I'm speaking about it tomorrow morning.
Okay.
That's a rather extreme story. And yet, what I have found in the 2 years since I did that is, okay, there might not be that story with the doctor and the allegations of corruption, etc. But this notion about the enormous numbers of men seeking medical certificates to get out of the draft happens in every single northern community. You see it all over the place. And the idea, so the idea I hope that people take away is this was no easy thing. These communities getting men together to go to war, you have 250 men show up. You know, the town needs to send 300 men to war, and 250 show up with a medical certificate saying, well, it's going to be somebody else.
Yeah.
It's a massive achievement.
Yeah.
It's a massive achievement to fill these armies.
Yeah, when you think about it like that, where there's probably, well, maybe not just as many, but there's a large number of people who are just as adamant about getting out of serving than going in to serve. You know, for every 16-year-old that lied about his age to get in, there's how many 32-year-olds who are like, oh, I have rheumatoid arthritis or rheumatism, whatever.
And then they write things like, he walked in with crutches into the doctor's office and came out with a medical certificate, threw away the crutches and skipped home.
Yeah.
Right? You find these accounts in the newspaper. The common denominator is they never gave a name, right? They're speaking in these general terms. But the interesting thing, and to build on this theme that Jared was talking about the long Civil War, how does it affect these guys after the war? This I found fascinating. Take your postmasters and your probate judges and your dog catchers and all of your elected officials. None of those men in the 25 years after the war were men who had gotten a medical certificate.
Okay.
Right? You got a medical certificate, you got out of the war,
Yeah.
but you had no place.
But nobody wanted anything to do with the after.
Oh.
That's interesting. So that's the Litchfield County book. So the Revolutionary War book is about Litchfield County and the Revolution, basically, or
It is. It's a series of vignettes. It's seeking this similar idea that, we sort of have a collective memory that, well, we were upset about taxes, and so we rebelled, and it didn't go really well, but we persevered, and with George Washington and the French, we won.
Right.
And obviously, the story is a lot more complicated than that.
As it always is.
Yeah, as it always is. So it's each chapter is sort of a standalone vignette about some level of complexity, loyalists, African American soldiers, women in the war, the home front. I'll just throw one real quick story at you. We need men to fight in the Revolutionary War, so men go off and they join George Washington's army outside of Boston in 1775. The soldiers that come back from the invasion of Canada and Quebec and all of that are bringing smallpox back with them, and Washington recognizes the threat. And so he has his army inoculated against smallpox. And then later in 1776, these men from Litchfield County, their service is up. So they go back to Litchfield County and they're arrested. Because in most Litchfield County towns, it was illegal to get inoculated against the smallpox.
Really?
Yeah, for old religious reasons and things like that.
Yeah.
And the governor of Connecticut has to step in and tell these selectmen, you can't do this because no one is going to join the army. We won't have an army if you're going to run around arresting everybody who got, by the general's orders, got inoculated.
Right.
So just little stories like that just give us a little more complicated understanding.
It's also fascinating. Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about the books that Pete has written about Litchfield County is clearly somewhat exceptional. There are some great stories there, but the work Pete has done is really an example of what you can do with almost any county out there,
Yes.
local history. Because sometimes we say, oh, we don't live in Adams County, we don't live in Gettysburg, we live in these far off places, and unfortunately nothing happened here. But it's a great example of how there are all of these local stories, as you go to cemeteries, as you kind of look around. Again, Litchfield's a little exceptional, but you could write these types of books for a lot of different communities, and it's a great method template almost for doing that.
I've been looking real deep in local history for 12 years, and I've done hundreds of public programs. And here's what I found. Not everybody likes history, but most people like local history. So you can use stories from people's backyards to make bigger points about national or international events.
Yeah, because every community was affected by the Civil War. The war didn't have to be there, like here in Gettysburg. Like, you're all affected because you're all sending your sons and husbands away.
Right.
And there have to be stories all over the country, in every county, just like the ones in Litchfield County. Yeah, there should be a rash of people writing books like these. Just, whoever's interested in the Civil War, start in your own backyard. You can't possibly do every county in the country, right? So it's okay if people
interested in one.
Yeah, all right. I don't want to encourage people to steal your idea. I hate when people steal my shit.
Great.
So
you don't have to go far from home to do the research.
yes, right.
I'm blessed with an extraordinary historical society. Extraordinary,
helps.
and that helps.
Yeah. All right. So what would you say to people watching right now, who have heard about CWI over the years and have always been like, someday I'll go and everything like that? What's your history with it, and what do you think about it? What would you say to them if they're on the fence about coming?
I've come every year since 1999 was my first institute. Yeah, starting as a student at Gettysburg and then, continuing on with these other programs. I would say no matter what your interests are, there's something for you here. So if you're somebody who likes the academic lectures, there are those in spades. If you love being out on the battlefield, we're going out 5 times this week on the battlefield for tours of different sort of lengths. If you have interest in military history, it's there. If you have interest in politics, in the home front, it's there. Emancipation history is there as well. It's a wide range of topics. I can't imagine somebody coming here and not finding many things, not just one thing during the week, but many things that are of interest to them. So,
and you get to be around like-minded people.
And what I would add is, I came to CWI for the first time in 1992, and I agree with everything Jared said. What I would add is, that's all great. The better part might be the conversations at dinner, might be the conversations in the dorms afterward.
Yeah.
You're going to meet like-minded people, but you're also going to make lifelong friends, and you're going to develop a CWI family. Because that's the atmosphere.
It's true, because you see each other every year, and that's usually the only time you see each other.
It's like
maybe you stay in touch, over the course of the year, but you're only seeing each other this one time, and it's like, hey. And I don't know about you guys, but does it seem like we were just here like somehow this winter was the longest winter in the history of winters, but then it's CWI. I don't understand.
Feels
how
like
that
the
works.
official beginning of summer.
That's
every
right.
year.
It
It's like
does.
the kickoff. It's
It
always,
does.
always something to look forward to.
It is always so. So you would recommend that if people are like, someday, that make that someday next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on out.
Give it a shot.
And if you're a teacher, come join the teacher program. And if you're a high school student, look into the Young Civil War Historians Conference. Let's get you down here. Let's get you in close settings with the best of the best historians and on the battlefield
Or
and
if
working
you're a
with-
parent and I remember a couple of years ago, because Pete was still around, so it was his last CWI. We were talking to this kid who was at the book signing, and he had I think he had just finished Scott Hartwig's first Antietam book, and he just bought the second one. And me and Pete were talking to him, and we were all impressed that he was able to read it, because it's this freaking thick, But his dad was with him, and I think his dad is into it too. But if your kid is really into this stuff and you're not, he could be into far worse things than the Civil War.
That's right.
These days. So maybe. It's not the cheapest thing in the world to do, but it's definitely something that is worth every penny that you spend doing. And it would be something that would pay great dividends for your child to be able to do. And so I encourage you to, if you can, bring them along and do it for them, because it is just like, I don't even know what to. It's like Disney World kind of, the only characters that are walking around dressed up are like me and Tad over there with his red hooded sweatshirt. But that's pretty much it. But as far as this feeling of everybody's happy and enjoying themselves, and there's just about anything that you want to know about, you can, like you said, you can go listen to somebody. But moreover, there are topics that are discussed that you never thought about until this person brought it up to you. And then it's like, oh, that sounds interesting. And that's how we based all of our interview invitations this year, is what is the topic that they're talking about? And, is it obscure? Is it something like that? Let's do all of those. Or it's just interesting or out of the box or something like that. And so I can't say enough about it. And I also search for the elevator pitch for it, but it's too much. There's too many good things that I need to say
But
about it.
that's a pretty good pitch.
Yeah, well,
There's
okay.
too many good things.
Too many good things to say. Can't think. There aren't too few words to describe how too many great things there are. Let's just quit while we're ahead. Or are we ahead? I don't think we are. Gentlemen, thank you very much for doing
Thank you,
this.
Matt.
Always a pleasure.
You too.
It's great to
Thanks
see
for
you
having
again.
us.
Great to talk to you. Thank you all for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.